The news just came in. The emotions are raw. Jacob DeGrom is no longer a New York Met. Let's talk about it on this edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. I cannot believe that I'm recording this show right now. I am absolutely stunned. I'll own it. I was wrong. Jacob DeGrom's not a Met. Now, let's just start there. Jacob DeGrom is not a Met, man. There's like a little boy inside me, the same one that cried when Ron Ventura got traded, that wants to tear up right now. This sucks, okay? And it's everything. It's the fact that his last 2 years were marred in injuries that brought us to this point. It's the fact that he signed a contract with the Wilpons that put a rift between him and the organization that either led to this or at least led to a contract structure that didn't keep him in a Mets uniform. It's the fact that they did not match this offer, assuming they had the opportunity to match this offer. We won't know all the reporting, but let's start with the deal. The deal, he is signing with the Rangers, if this is your first time hearing of it, a 5-year, it was a $185 million deal. It's $37 million a season. There is a vesting 6-year option. I would assume it's based on innings pitched for an additional $37 million, taking the total of the deal to $222 million. No trade clause. He got a great contract, and congratulations to Jacob DeGrom, of course. But this is absolutely devastating because it's not going to be on the same level as the Midnight Massacre, of course. That was the Mets trading Tom Seaver. And Tom Seaver meant more to the franchise than DeGrom did because, for one, he put the franchise on the map and he won a World Series. But Jacob DeGrom was authoring a Mets career that was the only thing even imaginable that could have rivaled the Seaver. If he stayed with the Mets for a 5-year contract, won 2 Cy Youngs in a World Series, suddenly he'd be in that type of a conversation. And for a guy that we watched his entire career play out, who came from nothing, who wasn't this top prospect, who was a shortstop in college, never the heralded guy. He wasn't even supposed to be in the conversation with Matt Harvey and Zach Wheeler and Noah Syndergaard and Steven Matz. He wasn't even supposed to belong in that group. And he became the best of that group. And he won 2 Cy Youngs, and he became the best damn pitcher in baseball. The fact that he's not a Met just sucks. And if you're celebrating this because you think, oh, DeGrom, he was hurt the last 2 years, you have no emotional ties to this fan base or to this franchise. If this brings you joy, I can understand if you logically can say 5 years with a 6-year option is too much for DeGrom. And we will have that conversation in the next segment. But if you were met with this news and it brought a smile to your face, you're just not my type of Mets fan. This sucks. And I can't say that enough. It is gut-wrenching because the Mets are finally good. And we saw DeGrom win a playoff game this year, and you just imagined getting another crack at it next year where maybe Jacob DeGrom could win a World Series MVP in a Mets uniform, and he could be on a float in a parade. But none of that can happen now. Now it's over. It's the finality of it. You're closing the book. And there's no way you can go back. Does this mean that the Mets are tanked for next year? No. They'll find a way to get another pitcher in here. But it's not going to be their pitcher. It's not going to be their guy. It's not going to be a guy that we thought 48 would be hanging on the rafters, and there could be a statue outside next to Seavers. if he spent his entire career with the Mets and won a World Series. And I don't believe that this is a sign that he never wanted to be here. If he signed a 3-year, $150 million contract with the Rangers, I would have said, I'd be like, okay, well, maybe he didn't want to be here. Or, 3 years, whatever, $45 million per instead of $50. Regardless. If it was a short-term deal that he signed with another team, I would have said, all right. The fact that it's 5 years with a 6-year option, to me, I believe, and we'll learn later if it's not the case, but as I'm recording this right now, fresh after it happened with very minimal reporting on what's gone through up to this point, I believe that the Mets most likely had a chance to match this offer. And for 5 years, for a guy who made, 26 starts over the last 2 seasons, I believe off the top of my head, I think it was 15 in 2021, 11 this year. For a guy that did not make 30 starts over the last 2 years, the Mets decided that it was not worth the risk to sign him to a contract that would take him basically through his 30s. And now you're at this point where for the Mets to be right, DeGrom has to continue to get hurt. And personally, I'm not going to be rooting for that. I'm going to be rooting for Jacob DeGrom to lead that Rangers team into the playoffs and to prove the Mets wrong on this one for not bringing him back, because I'm a fan of him. And I think he's a great person. I think he is an incredible talent. And I honestly do believe that he did everything he could, professionally and otherwise, to bring joy to Mets fans and to do his job and to do his job well. And I certainly hope that whenever Jacob DeGrom returns to Citi Field, he's met with a massive ovation. And I hope that one day we're able to look back on his Mets career and still appreciate him. But it's never going to be what it could have been. And that's the thing about free agency that just tears your heart apart. This one got to me. This one really did. So we're going to regroup here, and we're going to talk about who's next. And now, if you did not jump on the line for Justin Verlander at plus 375 to come back to the Mets at BetOnline, you should be kicking yourself. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. They've got it all at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. BetOnline is always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. As I just mentioned, Justin Verlander, prior to this, was plus 375 to go to the Mets. Now I put that at minus 250. I'm kind of kidding. I'm kind of serious. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Wow. Well, I'm still reeling from this news, guys. Jacob DeGrom's not a Met. Signs a 5-year deal. He's gone. No way you can come back from it now. Now you're left with Max Scherzer, David Peterson, Carlos Carrasco, Tyler McGill, and Joey Lucchesi. Same problem that was here before exists. You have to add 2 starting pitchers. All offseason, I've said they would either get DeGrom, Verlander, or Carlos Rodon. I always thought it would be DeGrom because I thought that the Mets would ultimately match the contract, even a 5-year deal, and they would keep him. And personally, $37 million per year, 5 years, I would have done it. I would have done $40 million over 5 years because that's how much I value Jacob DeGrom. And maybe I'm wrong. If Jacob DeGrom goes out next season and makes 10 starts, Steve Cohen and company made the right call here. But you have to replace him now. And there's only 2 names in the market that can do it. And it's going to be really tough to trade for an ace. So you want to sign one of them. And the guy that I believe they will sign now is Justin Verlander. If you were concerned about giving DeGrom a 5-year deal, don't you dare give Carlos Rodon a 5-year deal too. And you know what? He might get 6. That's way riskier, in my opinion, which might be ludicrous to some fans. Personally, you look at a guy with the shoulder injury history that he had, who as recently as 3 years ago, or maybe even 2 years ago, 2 seasons ago, before 2021, we weren't even sure if he was going to have a career anymore. He's been great. He had a good 2021, wore down at the end of the season, got a little bit of dead arm, lost the velo. It came back, had a full season this year. For the 2023 Mets, I would be thrilled with Carlos Rodon. I'd be concerned greatly about the length of that contract. It's time to reunite Max Scherzer with his old teammate Justin Verlander. That's the move here. You imagine he's going to get $45 million, a little more than Scherzer got. I think the hope would be you can get him on 2 years, but now Verlander has all of the leverage in the world as a reigning Cy Young to ask for a 3-year, $135 million deal. And if I'm the Mets, I'm doing that. I just wonder, now that DeGrom's off the board, with the Astros still in the mix, but apparently far apart in discussions with Verlander, with the Dodgers maybe in play as well, and he does apparently have a home out in LA, which way would Verlander turn? Are the contracts going to be equal? But now I think Verlander becomes a must sign, and I would jump all over it. You move on from this. You have to turn the page. The winter meetings are coming this weekend. It starts on, I think, Sunday. Or does it start? It might start tomorrow. It might start on the 3rd. You got to make these moves quick now. You got to get Verlander. If not him, Rodon, but I'll be very, very curious what the contract details will be on that one. And then the other options in the market, Kodai Senga and Chris Bassett, I think are kind of the clear things. So one thing I'll say is I think that this could be a good sign for maybe Bassett's return, where maybe the Mets want to bring back another guy that they know they can count on to pitch in New York. I don't think you have to worry about that with the Justin Verlander. But I think Bassett might be someone after the year he had where they might say now, all right, we're not going to have a DeGrom on the contract for 5 years. So even if Bassett wants 4, considering his durability, you might be a little bit more open to it. But this is a massive blow for the franchise. I mean, you're losing a guy that if he's healthy is the best pitcher on the planet. The only reason you want a playoff game this year. So congrats, I guess, to DeGrom and the Rangers for coming to a deal. And I'm very, very, very curious to see what's next for the Mets, to see what Steve Cohen plans to do. If they were really in on this one, I think he's still a Met. So I think that they were very interested in Jacob DeGrom on a 3-year deal, and they weren't comfortable going 5. And we'll just have to see what years 4 and 5 of that contract look like in a few years. But for now, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. Just like this one, if there's any more breaking news throughout the weekend with the winter meetings upon us, I will hop back on for sure to give you your fix of whatever is going on with our Mets. But as always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, hosted by Peter Bukowski. Locked On Sports Today is where you can go to stay up to date with everything going on in the sports world. You can follow Locked On Sports Today on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts.